I never thought a simple morning walk would flip my whole week upside down. I was just checking the back fence of my ranch like I always do, coffee in one hand, boots still half-laced. That's when I saw the dirt. Not a small hole, not a little landscaping project. No, this was a trench. A long, deep trench, stretching across the far end of my property like some kind of scar carved into the land. And beside it, stacks of PVC pipe, a few bulldozers, and a group of workers in orange vests. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe the county, maybe something had gone wrong with utilities. But then I noticed the sign on one of the trucks, the HOA logo, big and bold on the side door. That's when my stomach sank. I live just outside of a growing suburban neighborhood. A lot of the folks there are part of this self-important HOA that seems to think they're running a gated kingdom. We've had our disagreements in the past, mostly over their dogs barking too late or their guests parking too close to my gate, but nothing like this. I waved down one of the workers. He looked surprised, like he didn't expect anyone to be watching. I asked what they were building. He shrugged and said, "Pipeline. Water line for the subdivision. Right through my land. No warning. No email. No permit posted. No knock on the door." So I asked, "Did you get permission for this?" He just pointed toward the street and said, "Talk to the HOA lady. She's the one in charge." Of course. Karen. I'm not kidding, her name is actually Karen. And if there was a rule book for the worst kind of HOA president, she's the one who wrote it. Nosy, power-hungry, and always carrying a clipboard like she's auditing the whole town. If a leaf fell in your driveway, she'd fine you for litter. And now, apparently, she was laying pipe across my ranch without a second thought. I jumped in my truck and drove around the block to the HOA office, which is really just a converted shed behind the community pool. Karen was inside, sipping something from a branded mug and typing like she was working at the Pentagon. I walked in and said, "Hey, you wanna explain why there's a trench going through my ranch this morning?" She barely looked up. "Oh, that. Yes. We're expanding the water supply to the East Homes. The board approved it." I blinked. "Okay, and did I approve it? You're digging through my land." She gave me this smirk, that kind of smug smile that says she knows she has paperwork, even if it's completely fake. "There's an easement. It's all been handled. You'll thank us later." That word again. Easement. People throw it around like it's magic. But I know what's on my deed. I bought that land fair and square 5 years ago. I keep it fenced, maintained, and posted. There's no public access. No utility strip. No forgotten corner they can sneak into. But that didn't seem to bother her. "Look," I said, trying to stay calm, "I never signed anything. You don't have the right to dig there." She put down her mug and folded her arms. "This is for the benefit of the whole community. It's not personal. You're being difficult. Difficult. Lady, you just tunneled through my ranch like you owned it and I'm being difficult. I left before I said something I'd regret. Drove back, past the workers who were still digging like it was just another day on the job. One of them even nodded at me like we were on the same team. I didn't nod back. I spent the rest of the day checking every document I had. Land records. Title deeds. Old survey maps. Nothing gave that HOA any right to be there. Not a single line. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized what had happened. They figured I'd be gone all week. I had posted on Facebook that I was taking a short trip to visit family, and I guess someone shared it. Karen must have seen it and thought, perfect time to sneak it in. But I had come home early. And now they were caught red-handed. What Karen didn't know, though, was that while she was laying pipe, I was getting ready to shut off her water. Literally. Because here's the thing, that pipeline they were putting in, it started on my land. That connection point. That was my private well tap. My source. And now they wanted to steal it for their fancy neighborhood fountains and car washes? Not happening. Not while I'm still standing on my land. I didn't sleep much that night. I was too busy thinking about everything that could go wrong and everything that already had. It's not just the idea that someone dug up my land without permission. It's the fact that they thought I wouldn't notice. Or worse, that I wouldn't care. That's the part that kept me up. The arrogance. By sunrise, I was back out near the trench. They had made even more progress overnight. Heavy machinery left tracks through my pasture, knocking down a section of fence and tearing up a few irrigation lines I had installed just last season. I ran my hand along the edge of the trench. This wasn't a simple garden hose setup. These pipes were wide enough to run a full-scale community water supply. They weren't just borrowing a bit of pressure. They were trying to hijack the entire source. And the worst part? That water came from my well. I own that well outright. It's not shared, it's not municipal, it's not under the HOA's jurisdiction. It's a deep, reliable well that I had drilled years ago to keep the ranch self-sufficient. During the summer, I use it to keep my livestock hydrated. During dry months, it supports irrigation for my feed plots. And now it was being funneled into the HOA's pipes like it belonged to them. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures, not just of the trench, but the equipment, the vehicles, the workers. I snapped a few shots of license plates. One of the workers noticed me and waved. I didn't wave back. I just kept walking along the trench, filming the whole thing. Back at the house, I fired up my laptop. I still had the email from when I hired the well company years ago. It had the original invoice, the depth records, the water table data, everything showing that the system was completely private. I even found an old diagram I had drawn up when I was planning the ranch layout. It showed where the well was, where the line ran to my house and barn, and most importantly, where the pipeline didn't run through the HOA's territory. I called a local attorney next. He picked up on the second ring and listened without interrupting as I explained what had happened. After a long pause, he said, "You're going to want to shut that valve." Immediately, I asked if I could legally do that. His reply was clear: if they're tapping into your private well without consent or contract, that's not just trespassing. That's water theft. Water theft. I'd never even heard that term used in a real-world case before, but here I was, living it. I grabbed my tools and went out to the pump house. The main valve that controlled the water flow to that section of the land was tucked behind a locked panel. I opened it, turned the valve all the way to the right, and heard the deep, hollow sound of pressure releasing. That was it. The flow was off. No more free water for the HOA. By the afternoon, the calls started. First it was Karen. Of course it was Karen. Her number popped up on my phone like a bad joke. I let it go to voicemail. Then came the texts. The first one read, "Please restore water to the line. Residents are experiencing pressure loss." I didn't respond. A second text came minutes later, "This is a critical service. You are disrupting HOA infrastructure." Then a third, "You are in violation of community regulations and will be fined." That one made me laugh. Fined. On my own land. Eventually, Karen herself came marching up the dirt road to my gate. Clipboard in hand, phone recording, eyes wide with fake concern. She leaned over the fence and shouted, "We need to talk about your obstruction of essential utilities." I stepped out onto the porch. Calm. Silent. I let her rant. Then I held up the printed deed. The one with the well clearly marked. The one that proved the water was mine. I didn't even need to say anything. She stopped shouting. Her eyes darted across the paper, and for a second, I saw something flicker behind them. Not guilt, Karen doesn't do guilt. But fear. Maybe. The kind of fear that creeps in when you realize you might have gone one step too far. I didn't open the gate. I didn't say a word. I just stood there while she stared, holding that clipboard like it could protect her from the truth. And that's when I realized something. This wasn't just a fight over water. It was a fight over control. The next day started off quiet. Too quiet. The construction crew didn't return. The bulldozers were gone. No trucks. No shouting. Just a long, silent trench carved through my pasture like a reminder of what they tried to get away with. I stood there for a while, watching the morning fog settle across the field, wondering what their next move would be. I knew Karen wasn't the type to back down after being challenged, especially not by someone she thought was beneath her HOA's reach. Around mid-morning, I got a knock at the door. Not loud. Just a slow, steady tapping. I opened it to find two men in cheap polo shirts and shiny clip-on badges. They weren't real cops. They were HOA security. The same wannabe enforcers that patrolled the subdivision looking for garden gnomes that violated aesthetic code. One of them squinted at me like he was trying to look tough, but the oversized sunglasses ruined the effect. "We've had reports of tampering with a community water line," he said, like he was reading off a script. "We're here to investigate." I didn't invite them in. Instead, I stepped outside, pulled the door shut behind me, and crossed my arms. "That water line starts on my land. You're trespassing." He cleared his throat. "Sir, this is a civil issue, and we're here to resolve it peacefully." "Then call your lawyer," I replied. "Because nothing gets resolved until your HOA explains why they built a pipeline without permission." The other guy, shorter but mean-looking, leaned forward and said, "You're blocking a community resource. You could be held responsible for damages." That was rich. Me responsible. After they bulldozed my land, cracked my fencing, damaged my pasture, and tapped into my private well without so much as a courtesy call? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I just said, "You've got 10 seconds to step off my property. Or I'll make a call to the real sheriff." They didn't even argue. Just mumbled something about documenting the incident and walked back to their golf cart like kids who'd just been told recess was over. I watched them roll back toward the paved streets of their perfect little neighborhood, where lawns are trimmed like carpets and mailboxes must be regulation height. A few hours later, a letter was slipped under my front gate. It was folded in thirds, printed on HOA letterhead. The kind with that fake gold border to make it look official. The letter accused me of sabotaging HOA infrastructure, obstructing community utilities, and interfering with residential water access. It threatened legal action. Fines. Liens. Even criminal charges. It was laughable. Every point in that letter ignored the fact that they had never asked for permission. Never filed for an easement. Never consulted a single county office about installing a pipeline across private, fenced land. It was a threat wrapped in corporate-sounding nonsense. I made some calls that evening. First to the county records office. No permits had been filed for that section of the project. Not one. Then to a friend of mine who worked as a civil engineer. He confirmed what I already suspected. Any pipeline installed without legal permission, and especially one using a private water source, was completely in violation of property rights. I had every right to shut it down. The next morning, I started documenting everything. I walked the entire length of the trench again, filming each turn of pipe, each broken piece of fence, and every footprint their machines had left in the soil. I recorded the location of the shut-off valve, and even read out loud from my land deed while standing next to the wellhead. It wasn't just for my protection. It was preparation. Because I knew what was coming. Karen wouldn't let this go. She'd twist the truth, bury the facts, and try to paint me as the villain. That's how she kept control, by scaring people into silence. But I wasn't afraid. Not of Karen. Not of her little fake cops. Not of the fancy letter with gold borders. This was my land. My water. My fight. It didn't take long for Karen to escalate things. The very next day, I noticed new signs staked along the edge of my property. Bright red and white plastic boards, printed with bold letters, *** under HOA dispute, trespassers subject to fines. *** They'd been hammered right into my fence posts like the HOA owned the wood. Some even crossed onto my side of the line. The arrogance wasn't surprising anymore, but it still made my blood boil. This wasn't just a petty fight over a water pipe anymore. Karen was trying to brand my land as if it belonged to her HOA. Like she could rewrite the boundaries just because she wanted to. I pulled every sign down one by one and stacked them at the edge of her neighborhood's walking path. Not on their lawn, just close enough that the message was clear. Don't bring your lies onto my land. Later that afternoon, as I was feeding the horses, I saw a few people from the neighborhood walking the fence line, whispering and pointing at my ranch like it was some kind of crime scene. Karen had obviously started spreading her version of the story, probably claiming I'd attacked community property, or that I was denying water to the elderly or something dramatic enough to scare the others. It made sense. That's how HOA power works, fear and confusion. If you tell enough lies with confidence, people start doubting the truth. Around sunset, I got another visit. This time, it wasn't golf cart security. It was two actual sheriff's deputies. I saw the county logos on their cruisers and knew this wasn't some HOA stunt. They were polite, calm, and professional, the real deal. I stepped off my porch and met them halfway. "Mr. Calhoun," one of them asked. I nodded. "We've received a complaint from the HOA that there's been interference with a utility line. They claim it's causing water shortages in the neighborhood." I raised an eyebrow. "They mean the illegal pipeline they dug across my land?" They exchanged a glance. "I can show you the well. Show you the shut-off. Show you the deed," I added. "Let's take a look," the older one said. I walked them out to the pump house, explaining everything along the way, how I'd discovered the trench, how I shut off the water when I realized they tapped into my private system, how the HOA never filed for an easement or asked permission. They didn't interrupt. They just listened, asked the occasional question, and took notes. When we got to the wellhead, I showed them the capped pipeline and where the HOA's extension branched off. It was obvious. There was no county tag. No permit label. Just PVC jammed into my system with a hasty connection job. Like someone knew it wouldn't be inspected. The deputies took photos and jotted down more notes. "Have they provided you with any paperwork?" the younger one asked. "Not a thing. Just threats and fake fines." Back at the house, I handed them a folder I'd prepared the night before, copies of my land deed, well drilling certificate, and pictures of the unauthorized pipeline installation. The older deputy flipped through it slowly. "Well," he said, closing the folder, "from where we stand, it looks like you're protecting your property. They can file a civil complaint if they want, but this isn't a criminal issue. Not on your end." I nodded. "Appreciate you being fair about it." He gave a small smile. "You'd be surprised how often this kind of thing happens with these HOAs. They get too big for their boots." The deputies left without incident. But I knew this wouldn't be the end. Karen wouldn't let it die quietly, she was too invested. Too entitled. And when people like her get challenged, they don't back down. They double down. Sure enough, that night I checked my inbox and saw an email titled, *Emergency HOA Board Meeting Urgent Attendance Required. It was sent to every resident in the subdivision, and guess who was listed in bold letters at the top of the agenda? Mr. Calhoun's interference with community development plans. She was turning it into a public trial. A stage. One where she'd play the victim. And try to paint me as the villain. The so-called emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for Saturday morning at 10 a.m., in the local community center just a mile down the road. I hadn't stepped foot in that building in years. No reason to. My ranch wasn't part of their little kingdom, and I sure didn't ask for their rules. But this time, they dragged me into their circus, and if they wanted a show, they were going to get one. I parked my truck right outside the main doors, taking up 2 spots just for fun. Let them talk. Let Karen fume. I walked in wearing my work boots and a dusty flannel, fresh from mucking stalls that morning. The contrast was sharp. Most of the HOA board members wore matching navy polos embroidered with the HOA's logo like it was a uniform for a war they thought they were winning. The place was already packed. A few dozen residents sat in folding chairs, murmuring and checking their phones. I saw some familiar faces, neighbors I'd waved to over the years, folks I'd helped when their dogs got loose or when storms knocked down their fences. Their eyes flicked toward me with a mix of curiosity and hesitation. Karen stood at the front, next to a projector screen that displayed a PowerPoint slide labeled, *** Water Access Crisis, Community Under Threat. ***. I almost laughed. As soon as I stepped in, Karen spotted me and raised her voice. Ladies and gentlemen, the landowner in question has finally joined us. Everyone turned. Silence. She took a dramatic pause before continuing. We're here today because our neighborhood's access to clean, reliable water has been compromised by an individual who has, without cause or justification, shut off a vital utility line that serves over 60 homes. I didn't flinch. She went on. This pipeline was part of our long-term sustainability plan, supported by a majority vote of the board. It is our belief that Mr. Calhoun, she pointed directly at me, acted recklessly, shutting down the water supply without proper notice, legal process, or regard for community welfare. Murmurs rippled through the room. Some nods. Some confused glances. I raised my hand. Karen tried to wave me off. You'll have your say at the end. I stepped forward anyway. Since when does the HOA get to dig through land they don't own, connect to a private well, and claim it as a public utility? Karen's jaw tensed. I continued, pulling a stack of papers from my back pocket. This is my land deed. This is the certified well drilling report. This, I held up a map, shows exactly where my well sits and how far it is from HOA property. You crossed a legal boundary. The room was quiet again. Even Karen's board members looked a little less confident. I looked around the room. You've been told there's a water crisis. What they're not telling you is, they built a pipeline on land they don't control and expected me to foot the bill. No consultation. No consent. Not even a phone call. Just machines tearing up my pasture one morning. Karen jumped back in, voice raised. That water line benefits the entire community. It's selfish to cut people off. I tilted my head. Selfish is stealing something and getting mad when you're caught. The crowd stirred. A few residents whispered. Someone in the back even clapped quietly. Karen tried to regain control. The board will be pursuing legal action. This matter is not over. I smiled. Good. Because I already contacted the county. Turns out you never filed permits for the project. And by tapping into a private well without permission, you may have committed a violation of state property and water rights laws. Karen paled. I continued, and just so we're clear, the shut-off valve remains off. Until a real legal resolution happens. Not one dictated by a board that thinks it owns everything it sees. One of the board members leaned in and whispered something to Karen. She shook her head, clearly rattled. I turned toward the crowd again. I don't want to fight. But I won't be walked on, either. If anyone wants to talk like neighbors, I'll be home. Then I walked out, leaving Karen fuming at the front of the room, her carefully staged drama unraveling in real time. And something told me she wasn't done yet. 2 days after the HOA meeting, I woke up to an odd silence on the ranch. No buzzing of equipment, no echo of neighborhood chatter drifting over the hill. It was the kind of quiet that puts your senses on edge. I walked out with my coffee and instantly noticed something was off. My gate was open. I never leave that gate open. Ever. The metal latch had been twisted sideways, almost forced. I walked out onto the gravel path and spotted fresh tire tracks, multiple sets. Smaller, clean treads like sedans or SUVs. Not ranch trucks. And they didn't belong to me or my neighbors. Someone had come through during the night. Someone from the HOA side of the fence. I checked the perimeter and sure enough, a section of my fencing had been sliced. Clean cut, not just broken. And right beside the break was a fresh stack of plastic pipe segments, all coiled neatly with markings that matched the previous line they'd tried to install. They were back. And this time, they didn't even try to hide it. I took pictures. Every angle. Every cut. Then I called the county again. The clerk, same one as before, confirmed that there were no permits filed for pipeline work. Nothing. Not even a request pending. This was straight-up trespassing. Again. I texted Karen the photos, short and simple. ***, caught your crew trespassing again. Last warning. ***. Her reply came quick. ***, you are obstructing community development. Any damage caused by your refusal will be held against you. ***. I stared at that message for a good minute. Then I decided I wasn't going to wait around anymore. By noon, I had the backhoe out and was trenching right across the newly laid pipe section. Not a long trench. Just enough to tear through the buried connections and pull it all out of the ground. Then I tossed the plastic in a pile and covered the rest with loose gravel and topsoil. It was messy, loud, purposeful. I knew someone would notice. And they did. Not long after, a black SUV rolled up. Karen stepped out in her usual fitted blazer and oversized sunglasses, like she was about to attend a courtroom hearing instead of stand in a pasture. She didn't even walk past the gate. Just stood there, fuming. "You just destroyed a $30,000 installation," she snapped. "You just trespassed again," I replied, arms crossed. She pulled a folder from her bag. "We've filed a cease and desist. If you interfere with HOA work again, we will escalate legally." I didn't even open the folder. "Go ahead. I've got every incident documented. Video, timestamps, legal documents, and county records. You're building on private property. You lose this in court, Karen." Her nostrils flared. "We have the support of the community. That doesn't give you the right to take my land." She stepped closer. "You don't understand the influence I have." "I don't care." That seemed to shake her. Karen was used to people backing down, bending, compromising just to avoid conflict. But not here. Not on my ranch. I turned and walked back toward the barn, leaving her standing there, folder still in hand, heels sinking into the dirt. That night, just after sunset, my cameras picked up movement near the fence again. 2 figures. Hoodies. Flashlights. I stayed inside, watching the live feed. They reached the trench I'd dug and started dragging something toward it, pipes again. They were trying to lay it down under cover of darkness. I grabbed my phone, dialed the sheriff, and gave them a quiet update. 2 individuals, attempting illegal construction on private property. Caught on camera. Deputies were on site in 20 minutes. Flashlights cut across the field, voices barked instructions, and within moments, the 2 were in cuffs. I stayed back and let the law handle it. Later, one of the deputies came over and told me one of the suspects admitted they were volunteering on HOA instruction. That was all I needed to hear. Karen wasn't just pushing the line. She had crossed it. And she was about to learn what happens when the law finally catches up. The morning after the arrests, my phone started buzzing before the sun was even up. Calls, texts, voicemails, most from unfamiliar numbers. Local news outlets. A few community members I barely knew. Even one guy from a podcast asking if I'd be willing to go public with my side of the story. Turns out, someone from the sheriff's department leaked the incident to a local reporter, and the headline was making rounds online. *** ranch owner catches HOA digging illegal pipeline, 2 arrested for trespassing. ***. The story was spreading fast. And it wasn't just about water anymore. It was about power, entitlement, and what happens when someone finally says *no star. That same afternoon, I was stacking feed in the barn when a car pulled up to the gate again. I braced myself, expecting another HOA threat. But instead, it was 2 elderly residents from the neighborhood, Mr. and Mrs. Lane. I remembered them from years back. Nice folks. He once helped me pull a calf out of a ditch during a flood. They waved politely, and I walked over. "Mind if we talk a minute?" Mr. Lane asked. "Not at all." They stepped out, looking a little nervous. Mrs. Lane clutched a binder to her chest. "We just wanted you to know we had no idea what Karen was doing," she said. "We never voted for any of this pipeline nonsense. We didn't even know it ran through your land." Mr. Lane nodded. "She told us the land was part of a community reserve. Said she had your blessing." I shook my head. "She's been twisting everything from day one." Mrs. Lane opened the binder and handed me a packet. "These are minutes from every HOA meeting in the last year. We made copies. You should see what she's really been doing behind closed doors." I flipped through the pages. Sure enough, There were entries where Karen authorized spending thousands of dollars on land improvement projects and utility expansions. No names. No locations. Just vague descriptions that would mean nothing to someone skimming. "She's been hiding the details from the rest of us," Mr. Lane said. "Running things like it's her own private empire." "You're not the only one she's crossed," Mrs. Lane added. "There's talk now. People are fed up." I thanked them and promised to keep everything documented. Later that night, I scanned through the pages more thoroughly. One meeting in particular stood out. It was marked just 2 weeks before the original pipeline dig started. Karen had presented a special motion to fast-track water supply expansion, citing emergency drought conditions. There was no record of votes, no record of opposition. Just her name. And the board's approval. That's when it hit me, she'd planned this for months. Not just the pipeline. The whole operation. The lies, the secrecy, even the narrative that I was the unreasonable one. All of it was staged to make her look like a hero, fighting for the community. And me. I was just the obstacle in her path. But now that the story was public, the cracks were showing. The next HOA meeting was a complete disaster. This time, I didn't need to attend. I heard the aftermath from 3 different people who were there. Dozens of residents showed up demanding answers. Parents angry about the trespassing. Retirees furious about the thousands of dollars spent without their approval. One board member even stepped down mid-meeting, saying they refused to be part of Karen's dictatorship. And Karen? She tried to stay calm. Tried to blame it all on outside interference and miscommunication. But the damage was done. Her authority was unraveling. And the people she used to control with fake fines and parking warnings were finally pushing back. Meanwhile, I was meeting with my lawyer, filing a formal civil complaint against the HOA. Not just for trespassing, but for theft of resources, property damage, and unlawful use of private infrastructure. The case was solid. Evidence airtight. And with the arrests on record and the documents the Lanes gave me, Karen couldn't spin this one. But she didn't give up quietly. A few days later, a brand new banner appeared at the entrance of the neighborhood. *** community first, no more division. ***. Nice words. But behind them, the HOA was scrambling to save face. And Karen? She was already plotting her next move.